one of them hard choices starts off this turn. I had to start umpire. I had the Ethiopians in hand and put them into play. Not too terrible, but maybe not the optimal choice. I would rather have played my other choice, the Spanish, who have a better looking victory point slot. And when I get territory outside Europe, that should be pretty easy. Not necessarily being able to compete is going to be easy, but I only have two people I'm competing with for that, which is the English and the Portuguese. No one else has the outside Europe requirement. Strangely, Germany does it, even though they showed some attitude towards that. Christianity, again, the Irish and the Portuguese, two people that I don't mind beating up on. The money goal is a little richer than the Ethiopian one. The only thing the Ethiopians have as a bonus is this bonus for trade one. But here's where it changes. It's where the home location is. They both care about the home location. If the Spanish didn't, I'd be fine, I guess, with them. But the Spanish start here, sitting right next to Portugal's huge stack, a lot of Irish troops around them, and then this huge German empire next to them. I'd be worried for my survival. I could not. So it might be fine as long as I'm in last place. But if I'm going to try to win the game, I've got something very vulnerable in place there. So although this might be better for catching up in the short term, I felt like the Ethiopians is the only one to allow me a good chance in the long run, just because of the neighbors that are around it. So I started them up. They're not going to make as many points, though. That's the problem. You see, the thing with them is I can probably get all of Africa fairly easily with enough of it to get the bonus, fairly easily given the modifications. The other side of it being first outside Europe, well, from Spain, I could move into Africa for that outside Europe bonus. And then I would be richer on these. You know what? I'm going to go with the Spaniards. We had a few nations produce. I noticed I forgot to remove my leaders from Germany after they pushed into a new age. Our leaders that are our areas that produced, the Tang produced, and this is exciting, they produced airplanes and tanks. Tanks count just like Cav, which is fine. They don't like bad terrain. Airplanes, though, are completely different. They can basically fly over through enemy territory without being stopped. They can patrol over sea areas in sort of the same way galleys can, except they can do so if they're adjacent just to a navally controlled area as well. So as long as you have a boat in an area, you can be, using your planes to project power into another sea area. There's something very unsatisfying about, say, the way, and I don't know if I'm getting it right, but the way navies can kind of sail into an area, attack it, not as an invasion. Airplanes can do the same kind of thing, but then once you've attacked it, even though you're using fighter planes or bombers or whatever, you can't leave. You have to bring more. You have to build ground units there. So there's something kind of funky about that. But, it's not like this is an operational level game. I'm just not sure what is being represented in those cases. Let's see who else built. I have a feeling the Russians did, yeah. So the Russians had a pile of money left over. I don't know if I was supposed to spend that on victory points last turn. I feel like, I was supposed to do that with the Irish and with the South Americans. Unfortunately, the South Americans like money, and they got victory points on it, and I calculated out the victory point. Well, that's okay. So yeah, you know what? I'm going to spend that $20 off the Irish. Well, no, because, they're on the board. Nobody can take all their money. The danger, though, the danger is somebody could take their capital. But the Russians built a humongous navy out of this. I'm just going to write it off as I fucked up by not spending my money. I intended to, but I didn't bother with it. Let's see. Java built up a big navy as well. They also, I think, had extra cash kicking around, ready to be spent for victory points. But that's okay. Now they have a big navy, and they can, maybe produce more than that one victory point. Usually, the buying a victory point doesn't really make a lot of sense, except if I've got that money piled up, I'm not sure I'm going to use it. I've gotten into positions where, oh, geez, I want to decline my empire, and I've got a ton of money, so I got to wait a turn. So I don't know how to read that, really. But anyway, we go to trade in progress. I think we're going to have some of that. Green is holding this alliance card. I don't know if they could have used it to prevent this after it was revealed. I doubt it. They could have forced purple to say take a destiny action instead, but they're not really worried about hurting purple. By revealed, I mean revealed that they were taking Spain as their country. So they're basically using it as a thought of, well, I can once again stop, say, Japan from expanding, or stop Benin from doing something. So if Benin comes up with a maneuver, they might be targeting the Irish here, and that would be somewhat troublesome. The Pope's gone. I don't know how much big deal that is. I didn't see much use for the Crusade. As opposed to the Jihad, the Crusade really looked kind of icky for everyone. Of course, we have more Christians on the board now. I think being Christian is just a real bone in this game, and I think that means you will never see a historical play. I guess this guy's dead. He's probably from Ireland. There was no trade, but the modern Chinese came through and swept the Russians out of most of the territory. They lost their tribute, they lost their peace treaty. They're just losing a lot of ground. Now, this oil field here, not a great place to be, but it produces the oil money, which is big. Well, here's the problem. I'm not in Era 7 yet. The wheat, it didn't make sense to me, but in some ways the oil almost does, but maybe less in the period covered by the game. That once you have to really hit kind of the late 20th century before oil starts being exploited in areas that are really not controlled by at least a semi-modern country, one that could field tanks and planes. So I don't feel too badly about that. But the question is, of course, well, how much does this even make sense? How much does the survival of a pre-feudal society in terms of technology of that size make any sense in this era? And what does it mean? You could say, okay, well, their oil wouldn't be exploitable because there's a bunch of natives running around there going ooga booga. But how could that be reconciled with this modern world? And I have no idea how to do that. And again, maybe that's an anomaly, but it's a very unbelievable situation in this game, and one that's been cranking out pretty good points for blue. So they have not had a reason to get rid of that empire or to force it to try to expand, especially since it's feudal and there's almost, it's much, much more difficult to expand out of when you've got a feudalism counter on you. I don't know if feudals can even exist. Empire age 3, so they probably shouldn't even be feudal yet, but we'll leave them there. Oh, no, they're democracy. Whoa! And I'm sure democracy can exist in age 2. Yeah. So actually, I couldn't go to feudalism there. It is a bigger question. They are also Islamic, and Islam has a limitation of ages 3 to 7. Now, this is, this is where things get kind of crazy, because if you follow the full placement restrictions for a religion on religion expansion, and not so much for politics expansion, you end up probably with something to some extent, maybe a little bit more realistic in that, you know, Hinduism is not going to leave the Indian area. Confucianism is not going to leave China. Buddhism is going to be somewhere near India. You're not going to spread it somewhere else. Likewise, you're not going to get Christianity in, I don't know, the Philippines, you know? I mean, it's just not going to happen, right? Okay, so here's the thing is, at least with the spread of Christianity and Islam, it seems kind of iffy that, you know, you'd never have the Irish, as they historically showed up, being able to become Christian until when? 1, 2, 3. Let's see, 1, 2, 3. Yeah. 1, 2, 3. Yeah. So 3, 4, 5. The Sixth Age. They would not be able to become Christian until the Napoleonic Wars. Unless they did what they did, which is found Christianity here in Greece and then, you know, brought it back. But to me, that's just goofy, right? So those restrictions can't completely apply, or if they can, the game's got a real flaw there. But I don't know how else. Yeah, I just don't know how to interpret these things. So I'm following the same path that I did with the grain, which is that, look, these guys are just too primitive to put an oil well down. It's too primitive for oil companies to trust going in there right now. But that may or may not be right. It breaks out with a maneuver capturing Andalusia here. They also sailed to sail here too. I'm not planning on doing an economic phase. They sailed into Tunisia, sent their administrator there so they can build more units there, and they're planning on basically a migration into Africa and a heavy movement there. They took a fertile region from Ireland, which is kind of bad because now Ireland has a disorder, but they got a po' boy there, so they're okay, because that'll keep the populace happy on Ireland's next action. They get to get rid of that. Performed a move to get rid of the unrest here. It was probably a bad idea, actually. I think they have a mine. Yeah, they have a mine, so they could have collected up enough money if they did a civilized action to buy off that unrest, which would have been a better move overall. As it is now, they've got a huge pile of forces here, and they didn't really get much out of it except removing that unrest. And then the Japanese are starting to try to dig the Tang out of their territory, but that's a hard job. I sent basically twice this much in against a couple of Chinese units. They used a barrage to improve their defensive, their missile strength, and therefore they had to commit both their units in the first round. But they basically just really hammered the Japanese, taking a big ship down, and painful situation. You can see Japan doesn't look very impressive again. It's going to be a hard job for Japan to dig their way through it is more modern society that they're facing, and they're going to have a rough go of it. And it's quite possible that the Tang are going to be able to just knock them off the map with those planes and everything. Probably a good move. But last maneuver, we're doing the English, and they moved a boat up here to try to shift some of their forces out. I had a boat here. Hold on, I got to change some of my maneuvers. But until I get to that, they're really picking on the Irish. They went into the Cape, and they're taking Ireland itself, trying to knock it out. So that's going to be kind of an impressive feat. They're basically trying to knock out the biggest point maker that Green has. Green's in the lead here. How much does it really help? Well, I'm in third. I feel like I've got to stomp on people some, and I don't see that Green is being adequately hit. The Russians are under some pressure, but if we can knock both their powers down significantly, they're going to have trouble holding that lead. Use of the Mesmerizer card essentially allows you to switch the attack cards, or the battle cards for the two players, and that pretty much guarantees a victory. If you have anything like numerical superiority, the Brits went in very, very heavily. They have enough to get rid of the disorder, of course, the printing press goes away, Poe goes away, and this is going to mean that the Irish no longer have a capital. If I can find the Irish, there they are. And I get a 3-point city that I captured there. Wow, I'm Islamic. They don't want to attack Benin. I don't know what to do with these guys. Shit. These are the lost folks from back here. I really don't want to attack Benin with them. 1, 2. Shit. 3, 4, 5. I'll drop them down here, I guess. I'm just trying to spread out and get as much territory as I can at the same time that, I'm conducting these attacks, because I want to make sure that I keep my position as the biggest of the outside Europe powers. And I think I've got that so far. But there's some risk. Portugal's not going to get another move. Ireland's not going to get another move. So, I'm not sure I am the biggest, though. 3, 4, yeah, cutting Ireland down did it. All right, and, well, the Irish actually have quite a bit inside Europe still. But let's see about those attacks. I succeeded in 2 attacks, so I get 2 glory for those, for being Islamic. I didn't want to attack Benin because they're Islamic as well, and then I just lose points. I don't even break even. The Tang did a civilized action and became Islamic. There's just so many advantages to it. And beyond that, they added computing, which, since they're in the 7th age, shows up right where they were, making it easier for other people to get there. And it gives a small advantage in trade. Main thing, it gave a glory. But now I'm over here on the Irish, and they want to play the Pope again. Boom. One thing they wanted to do, they lost him before, was play capitalism. But I'm out of counters for capitalism. What I'm not going to allow people to do is to dig through the counters already on the board to see if they could substitute to get that. This is for a glory point and nothing else. So the Pope goes on the board, but this is where it starts getting complex. He's actually got a lot of these. Now he wants to become Islam. Well, that's going to lose him the Pope. He's okay changing religion and government. I don't know if he can become Islam. He's 5 spaces away from Medina. He has to do that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, because he's playing the card for Islam. You can't just pick up a religion without fulfilling the requirements, is the way I kind of look at it, except if you're taking it through the spread of religion. But he is within range, so he becomes Islamic. That means the Pope goes away. And, oh, I hope there's an Islam marker. There should be. I don't know what the hell this is. That's the jihad. Yeah, I'm not even sure there is an Islam marker. There's one. Nah, see, I get points. I get points for being Catholic, or for being Christian. I'll stick with just the Pope. The Pope's good enough for me. I got to figure out a place to put him. The reason I kind of wanted to do the Islam is I could play a jihad, but I can play that anyway over on the Russians. And I'll find that. And that's going to cause all the Muslim nations to have a problem. I'm going to throw it over here in Deccan because I have desires to go there anyway. I'll look to see if I have any events that I want to play. But, it would have been possible for me to get rid of Christianity and become Islamic after being Pope. The Pope goes away then, to get extra points, but I think I'm still in the running for points as largest Christian nation. I've got 3, 4, 5 spaces. What other Christians are there? There's the Portuguese with 3, and I can't think of any others. I was playing with the idea, but I don't think any actually have. Germany, on the other hand, threw satellites into play. They also had a rare conjunction. They took a production turn afterwards. Humongous money. They were up around, right around 100. before they produced everything. Now, they did not build any fortresses. Instead, they just concentrate on building their tanks and their boats. They're planning on going very much war bunny. They have a strategist here. They get bonuses on their tanks. They're planning on finishing off Russia or doing a lot of damage to them. They also, with that money, the reason they didn't build a lot of forts, they got $60. That's 3 victory points, 3 glory points that they can throw in right there. On top of that, they adopted Christianity to cut down on the Irish victory points. They're clearly a bigger empire, and boom, they just took it away from them, At least 1 point went away because of that. Which, as long as that's one of the leading players, or the leading player, they really do have to worry about the net rather than just feathering their own nest here. And they're helping everyone by doing this and not really hurting themselves. Because they did that, they actually got an expansion beforehand, so they have a little bit more money. Expansion into an empty area. Why didn't I build a tank there? Where did I build my second tank? Oh, there it is. Alright, so instead I could move this and build the tank there, and that'll give me $3 more than I had. Why not take some more valuable territory? All right. And I do not have a civilized action over here, so we're going to discard empires. Just checking to see if there are any that are going, because otherwise, I don't see any that are going. So otherwise, we're just moving on to the end of turn stuff. I don't think there are a lot of cards out there. There's this Glorious Glory. If red feels like it's going to gain a decent amount of points this turn, I got to kind of think about that. I got this Glorious Pity, which I wanted to play. I had to play this during my events phase. Now, I always forget when it's supposed to be played. So this was the Germans. They weren't very far behind. They only gained, 1 point of glory off that turn, so they'll be up another point. To me, it's worth playing just to get the point. Even if maybe at some other point I'd be able to play it for more. I just can't guarantee that. We run into an interesting situation. This Glorious Glory, which doubles everybody's glory. I've just generally counted the glory and doubled it. However, I'm not sure that that's proper, at least in the case of the Hindus. Remember, Hindu gives you this, hey, you get to, if you have 1 or 0 glory, you get 1, additional 1. And if you have more than 4, you lose 1. Now, if this is applied in between, or, rather than post all glory calculations, and I think it should be, the Hindi would be getting their score calculated, kind of doubled as it's being calculated. Each step is doubled. And then, hey, if they're above 4, they're going to lose 2 points from that. So it's kind of a bit of a bone for them, and I think that's how it has to be played, actually, although I haven't been paying attention to doing it that way. I think I will try when I can remember it. Nobody wanted to cancel that. The only person sitting on a cancel card here, I think, is Gray. Red played this, and Gray needs to make up some ground, and they also feel kind of like they've got a good chance of getting the advantage off of this. Remember, you can't pre-calculate these things, which I think means you have to make your decision rather rapidly. Maybe if you've got it all in your head how much glory you're going to get and how much everyone else is going to get, that's great. But you shouldn't be spending time on it is what I'm looking at it. In my solo game, that means I got to just go on feel, which is what I think it really was intended to aim at, but not all players are the same. Some will have every single value memorized in a point-based game like this. All right, let me calculate them and see what the results are. Also reading this, I would say the money that gets converted into glory is going to be doubled too. So if I buy 3 glory here, I'm going to get 6 points off of it, because that is bought during the harvest glory phase, and this is all effects. Scores have tightened up quite a bit. This was not a good turn for green. The Irish made no points whatsoever. It may be time to abandon them. Remember, they made a point off becoming Pope and stuff like that, and generated a point for the Russians from the jihad, but they're pretty much at the end of their rope at this point. They're no longer the Germans hitting them as biggest Christian, not, there went, let's see, they got 3 points for biggest Christian, right? I think they got 2 off that this turn. They're still a little bigger than the Portuguese, but they lost one. Yeah, they should have gotten some points. I think I cheated them out of points there, because there isn't another Christian nation anyway, of any size. Still, you can see most of the countries are on a level here in the 120s. Even red's closing the gap, but poor purple. And now we're going to buy some of these things. That's 3 for Germany. That makes 6 more. Bang, right into the lead. But the Irish are able to spend 20 and grab 2. The South Americans are able to do the same. Nobody else has the kind of points to do this. I'm assuming the Irish are past Renaissance. Yeah, almost everybody is. The only people who aren't are these back here, the Russians and the Native Americans, who, like I said, there's something anomalous about that. That it's like the ancient empires staying in history of the world, but the thing with history of the world is you don't have the details on the technology. They look stupid with their little daggers and tiny little buckler shields facing British Tommies or whatever, but you got to figure everybody's kind of progressing. Here, you have to do a little bit more hand waving or imagining, try to figure out what's actually going on here. These aren't galleys, like there's some kind of little Coast Guard ships or something, but what does it mean, compared to the modern armies? Why, I don't know. Why is there so much detail and it doesn't quite click, where you have to kind of fade in some other things? And I just feel like there should be this steady progression with the forces that is almost enforced on you, just to keep things from getting too silly. But on the other hand, it does make a modern army versus, whatever hasn't been upgraded properly. You can see it as in World War II, certainly the Ethiopians, were fighting with sticks and stones against the Italians, but they weren't an empire like this, and they weren't in close contact with more advanced empires like this is. On both sides, it's got very advanced empires. It's very hard to justify that would be what it appears to be. But on the other hand, the game is such that it's possible to justify it by a stretch of the imagination. So you don't know whether or not you should accept what the game appears to provide to you and say, wow, that's weird, or and cool and all that, or just say, nah, there's something allegorical going on there, essentially. All right, we're pushing into the next turn, and we are getting close here. One of the reasons we're getting close is because it is tightening up. At this point, we're at 130. That means 2 people can win it. Well, not the Irish, but the Germans could win it by pushing things over. But these guys, if they get the right pushover, like the moon launch and the internet, they can win it too. That's 14 points, and these guys aren't too far behind. As obviously, they're not going to do it back here in Roman culture, but still, there's this tightening up of the game for everyone except poor purple, who, they took a pass turn this time basically by starting Spain. They're never going to catch up they have no chance. But at least they can, maybe get back up with the pack somewhere. I made a little bit of a miscount here. I dropped Gray's Glory by 4 points because basically the Germans and the Khmer are both tied with the Tang. I missed the Tang had this computing down here that I just put or whatever. And, well, essentially they're all tied. And the Tang were closer in the turn order. You know what? I got this out here for a reason. I'm going to play it. I want to grab the turn order as yellow. I don't think anybody really wants to oppose that. This guy might be upset about it, but it's okay. This is not a card to waste on anything else. So we're going to pull the turn order over here at the beginning of the turn. Lucky thing I picked up the camera because otherwise I would have been selecting and just starting going. It's an interesting metaphor that this game kind of brings out. I don't know. Sometimes I just get these weird kind of philosophical thoughts in the midst of when I'm playing. And in this case, it had to do with, how life seems to really drag on in the moments. And then you realize how much time has passed. And in a sense, this game is sort of the same way. I mean, yes, we're covering the whole of human history, and there's a certain amount of detail and everything. And I guess it's more linked to the life thing, because it's the whole game's dragging out too. But it does feel kind of amazing to say, oh, wow, look how far I made it. What's up with that, I don't feel like I was terribly enjoying it. I'm interested in the game. I probably want to play it again sometime. But I didn't take all that much pleasure, like life. And it went through, and I survived it. And, like life, maybe next time will be better, right? Okay, we had a couple of productions here. The Khmer. I'm trying to see who else did one. I guess just the South Americans. And you're definitely seeing that acceleration with the industrial revolution and such. Not, it may have come a little later than it should have because I didn't pay attention to it. But wow, South America really, really rich. A lot of big navies showing up. Same with the Khmer. Actually, they're getting their fleet in play, prepared to make another play for Southeast Asia. That's another victory point for them? Just one, but it can take some away from yellow. And then the English did a trade. They used the radio and the bonus of the polar nearness to be able to trade with the Tang, who aren't particularly good at trade. They're a 0. They don't have any real advantages. Ended up playing the same cards. Now, the English had a backup card that they didn't use. They ended up giving the Bad Augury away, which is a nice card. But in return, they got the, I think the Italians, which is an Era 7 capable empire. So, on both sides, it's something somewhat useful. I don't really mind giving red something nice because I'm a ways behind. I don't think they're going to stomp me with it, and they don't and I don't have anything particularly stompable right now, and I don't particularly mind if they get some advantage out of using that. They're not someone I'm targeting, so they're probably not someone anyone's targeting. So they're probably going to use it to prevent, say, green from getting a bonus, which is what I would do with it anyway. Anyway, I won the trade, got 3 levels off of it, so now I've got airplane capability. I'll be moving up to their same level, which means they have to try to advance. They tried as hard as they could. They wanted to, but they're going to have to try to advance to push their way, to make sure that they're ahead of me all the time, because they don't have a philosopher, I don't think. And I also got a glory from that, and because I only beat them by $1, I got a money, which I didn't take from them. They didn't have any. And that pushes me into the maneuver. A lot of people are going to be maneuvering. First couple maneuvers. First, Java. Spread out a little bit more. No attacks anywhere. Being careful. They couldn't even move this ship out. But trying to grab as much territory as they can, including over in Africa. Not worrying about getting the most valuable territory necessarily. Just trying to get the most territory. Lay claim to stuff. They don't think the Irish are going to make it out to here, but they want to block them in. The problem that Java has is they're sitting on a democracy. and they have a decent number of cities, just a couple of them. They don't really want to throw them into unrest, but they don't want to lose glory by going to war with someone that hasn't attacked them. They could have, of course, concentrated a lot of force against the Chinese Navy here, but that would have been kind of a crapshoot with no advantage, really. What they want to do is pick on the the leader, the Greenpeaces, but they don't have a right to without taking some sort of penalty. Then over on purple, the Spaniards, not a great option for them. I didn't have a lot of boats. I thought I had more boats for them. Turns out I only built one, which gets me into Egypt. At least it's the rest of the world, and I can start spreading out through Africa and the Near East there. And then I also took out both Portuguese and Irish, just because I had so many troops I needed to spread out. I'm kind of weakening my home area here by this. Took some losses against the Irish. That went several rounds of combat. This maneuver phase was kind of impressive. They had to attack some of these Javanese ships and destroy them. They just have such a potent force overall, so that they could slip around, leave a couple of units here so they could slip around and hit the Russians in India, and just to destroy something. That got them a glory and a nice location, which they can start producing in now. They also took out a gray Khmer unit. They attacked here in Tonking, but rather than face that, Gray played the treachery card, which forces them to retreat. It's just a, hey, I won the battle, you're out of there. It's that simple. Now, if you had the rout card as well with that, you could destroy the enemy army. And they're keeping their bargain with the modern Chinese. They don't see any real reason to take them out, although the modern Chinese may be in a disadvantage against the Tang in the long run, simply because the Tang seem to be expanding so rapidly here. Problem is this red counter set is not very big. And they took Honshu away from the Japanese, another nice grain location. There was a navy there. They just went in. 2 air units took it over. Seems a little weird, but, you know, again, you got to figure other operations are underway to capture that. It's not just a bunch of fighter planes just conquered Japan. But that blow is going to be pretty significant towards making Japan not seem like a viable nation. It's been struggling anyway, and now, you know, it's down to one land location, one sea location, and someone hunting them who's very powerful and very capable of taking them down. They're not the first choice for red to go after. We're more interested in green and gray. But hey, you know, take your opportunities where you got them. And if you've got a combination like this, that's pretty sweet because you can rebuild your units a little cheaper. It's a nice combination there. I forgot the Russians are Islam, so instead of gaining a point for attacking them, I actually lose one. I wouldn't have done that. The Russians were the next active, and you can see they launched a naval attack down here into Mesopotamia. First of all, it might have been better to go here, but I can't tell if that's supposed to be fertile or what this stuff looks like, which is just desert or something. Kind of more like this. I know that in this area there's wealth of some sort, or was at times, in terms of fertility of the land in those islands for sugar and such not. So, at least from Europa Universalis. So, I'm playing it as fertile, as opposed to, you know, what you see here. They would make a big difference, because if these are desert, they're totally useless to anyone, really. And the same would be true with this. Very few people could use them. So this would actually be, it would have been an easier attack, and it would have been an attack against someone who was doing a little better than blue is. But this one gives me the opportunity to kind of hook up with the stuff that I'm stretching down into the Near and Middle East here. I also cleared out probably a waste, clearing out the disorder here. You know, the problem with that, of course, is I still have disorder, and that makes it just as you know, there's almost minimal advantage to getting rid of not quite all of your disorder, because it means you got to keep getting rid of some. But more than that, I don't know how long they're going to last. And the stack that went to clear that out could have maybe attacked something like this, essentially, and gotten me a glory that way. But I'm still kind of looking at keeping the Russians in play, because the Irish are going to be disbanding. And in fact, Benin, an exciting attack, this huge stack here, naval invasion down into Angola. And the Irish played, I don't know what the card is, this High Command. It allowed them to pick a bunch of the attackers' units that have to be committed. And basically they increased the cost of the combat, threw all their own units in. It ended up a tie in one round of combat and just destroying, you know, both sides pretty heavily. That gives the glory over to Brown. I was doing it as a chance, hey, if I had a hell of a good card, if I could have won that initial battle, there would have actually been some possibility of stretching it out. But I was really badly outnumbered, even though I have the terrain of the invasion and such on me. We got one more going, is the Germans. Germany shows her might. Striking for what they're interested in. Oil all over the place. Heading down here into Asia Minor on the way into that. We're hoping we can get the big oil fields in the Near East. This was probably a mistake, but it's such a valuable area for the Russians that I wanted to cut it off. It cut out two of their ships, galleys that they had. That galleys need support of a location, and that was the last place. Alternatively, I could have sent, this was the strategist on a second move. Now remember, I got rails, so I can shoot over here and then attack. Alternatively, I could have shot into Cappadocia and gotten closer to more oil more quickly. I think I've got enough units to push my way through, barely, especially once I get my airplanes online, although that's, you know, not necessarily, but I've got some boats that aren't really committed to what I'm doing. Plus, I've got a lot of openings. People are going to go shooting for glory there, I'm assuming, at least some people. So, I'm going to get a boatload of points this turn, and that's going to be sweet. That much I know. And that's going to push us down to the Destiny phase. Turns out I screwed up with blue massively. I didn't move the Persians, and they've been affected by that lack of movement. They were supposed to. I'm just going to have to pass on them. Now, this wild card, I think I was planning on doing a maneuver with the Plains Americans as well. Only thing I can still do with them is a civilize. And I may instead do a destiny on them. I'll look at my cards, see if there's anything I can do with a civilize, but I don't think there is. Okay, purple has a civilize action, and they played Christianity over on Spain. Still gets me the glory. I was able to do that. I'm definitely within range of Spain. I'm also, more importantly, within range of Spain with my modern Chinese, because I have radio finally. I hope. I think I'm in the same stack. Yeah. I also played a peace treaty between myself and the Tang to formalize that situation. I'm a little worried about how powerful the Tang are. I don't think they're going to hit me, but I'd like to just solidify it. It means that I'm the one who's going to be able to hit the Russians primarily, and I'm going to have this kind of open area in Asia that I can pad my own sources with. Now that's iffy. The Tang are thrilled with it because they were actually kind of worried about the modern Chinese. And I also played an ambitious leaders, which gets me another leader, so I can pull 2 leaders on the board. And I ended up getting Mao, who's a po' boy, populist, and the builder here. So I was able to actually urbanize a little bit more than I would have been otherwise. Blue kind of forced to do a civilize or else waste their turn. The bonus for that was they had the Great Pyramids. So they got a point of glory off that. They also played urban riots against the Germans, but the Germans canceled that with a bad augury. That would have caused some disorder, in a couple of their cities. Basically, it reduces any cities above 1 by a level. They had a couple of them, and you really don't want disorder on you in this game. It's a tough call because that's a powerful card that could have protected this one from being canceled. That's going to double everyone's glory, but that's, you know, just a sweet amount of points. The Japanese had a capitalism card in their hand that they really were expecting to be able to play, but it turns out there are no capitalism counters left in the game, at least without shuffling them. So they didn't get a glory off that. Instead, they played a couple of bad events on Germany, both of which knocked them back a progress. So Germany's back here in the 6th era, which I find kind of important because Germany's in 2nd place. Looks very powerful. They look like they're going to gain a lot of ground with all the oil they took. I mean, everybody's kind of realizing, green ain't the problem anymore. I think gray is. And tan sure ain't the problem. So by hitting them twice and knocking them back out of Era 7, they're not going to be playing the internet anytime soon. And then you can see the Japanese extended their power slightly here, but it wasn't terribly useful. Now, as we go down, gray isn't going to be doing any civilized actions. So now we're at the discard empire, and there are a couple of people who look like they're doing it, or maybe one. And we get the Portuguese, the Persians, who look like they're doing it. The Portuguese and the Irish are going to be disappearing. Blue doesn't want to kill the Portuguese here. This is not a mistake. This is a matter, I think they were, I don't remember if they were democracy or capitalism. I think they're capitalism. This is not a mistake. This is a matter of that, it's my turn card. They don't want to come off the board anymore. This marker was over here where they expected it. They're taking a pass instead. No. I don't, you can't force somebody to discard an empire with the alliance card. So they're not actually disappearing. Glorious Glory was played. Red canceled it out with a bad augury. That was a very wise thing because Germany alone made 20 points, more than that. No, 20 points. Would have been doubled to 40. They would have been significantly ahead of everyone else. As it is, they're tied with green, but green's in a turn where they've only got one empire. They're going to be restarting with something else, but they don't have a lot of advantages right now. On the negative side, though, for gray, Germany's not got a lot of pieces they can expand. They're pretty much, close to about where they're going to be for their points. Now, 20 points is quite sweet. What was that? That can't be 20. What the fuck am I on? I got 4 for that. I mean, come on, man. Maybe it was 10 points and would have been 20. Because 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Yeah, I think it was 10 and would have been 20. Anyway, because they were doing pretty well before this turn, they would have been well ahead of everyone with 20 points. Anyway, 10 points is tremendous. And I think they're not getting any of their pyramids there. Here's the problem. The Khmer are down to very, very little as well. I think they're... they have their home as 1, and I think they're 2nd place in artifacts. So they're down to 2. Japan is not making anything. They're going to have to disappear. You can see tan's kind of fallen back to the blue level here. Blue did still fairly well, given that they totally screwed up their turn. Yellow's doing quite well though too. They made some decent points as well, and they were kind of unhappy with the English not being able to get the point bonus this time. Nobody's got the 20 points, so nobody's going to buy them. But yeah, the English were, let's see, 1, 4, they had the most money, 5, 6, 7, 8 points, which is pretty damn sweet as well. And they actually have a lot of room for some sort of advance. not in the victory point table, but remember they are Islamic, so they can go conquer things and get victory points that way. The Germans are Christians, so they can't do that. They don't really have that kind of bonus option available. So it's really kind of up in the air. And of course, if green has another piece there, if they can resurrect that and keep Russia making some points, they may still be in this. Poor purple is just, I mean, they're just not moving. They're getting nothing. The modern Chinese made nothing for them. Spain, of course, was recently started. At least it made them some points. 1, 2, 3. I think they made 3 points off Spain, which isn't bad for a first turn, of a new empire, to tell you the truth. All right. I think we can fit another one on here. Crap. I see I had this up so that I could remember to play it, but then it looks kind of like an empire, so I don't notice it. This is just, the solitaire game issue, but there's a good possibility I would forget things. So the English didn't end up being able to seize all the glory for themselves. They might have been in, I'm pretty sure they would have been in the lead had they played that then. No, because there were cancellation events. Remember, the double glory got canceled by someone. Would have been really sweet to have both of them come out and not be canceled, right? What we're seeing here, and this is just the nature of these kind of tight, close games, is it's all going to come down to a card draw in a lot of, perhaps. Whoever gets the internet card and can get it off, if they're within 7, if they're in this tight little packet, they can win. Now there's a time limit on here, which is if people do progress and get up here and do another progress, they can win if they're in the top. It's, I don't know, it feels somewhat dissatisfying to me sometimes to play a game of this length and have it come down tightly. I know that should be seen as a positive thing, just because when it does come down that tightly, it comes down to, this really almost silly sort of position. Who draws the internet card? Does somebody have something that can stop it? Can somebody make them oversleep? Whatever. It doesn't feel as likely, though, that it's always going to come down to a single particular type of luck. Which is to say, players are going to have different cards in their hand and they can jump in and prevent an action at any time. If they're careful, they can hold cards that can stop a winner from going over. So it's more like an Illuminati style game where now your goal at this point in the game is to hoard those important cards that can stop other people from winning. We don't know how long this is going to take because there are a decent amount of cards that can, screw with things. Of course, with me in the game, that's not going to be, there's a possibility I might not play them, right? Just out of accidental or, but there's a possibility somebody may not play them out of spite, king-making type practices in an opposed game. What's notable here is I don't see the kind of tendency that, say, the coin games like Andean Abyss have, which is this... as long as you keep it tight, it's going to come down to this one thing. Who gets the bonus off the flip of the card that shows, when the final scoring is? This has a little bit more chaos at the end, so you don't know what it's going to come down to. It's still going to be that exciting, close, tense game. But there is something kind of dissatisfying when, you play something for, 12 hours or whatever, and it ends up being a luck factor at the end. I mean, I don't know. To me, it disturbs me. But when I look at something like this, look, this guy screwed up royally. He played very poorly, apparently. Other people, well, there may be some patterns in here, like if you see the gray and the green, well, tan was in the lead at one for a long time in this game, and now they're in the position where they've fallen into that kind of second tier. Whereas gray and yellow were in that second tier, and we're able to engineer a jump forward. Green's still up at the top, but they don't have a lot of prospects. I think they're going to fall back. So it may be in your best interest in this game, not like in a lot of games, and History of the World is one of them, not to jump to a lead ever. Try to keep yourself a little behind. Don't put yourself way out there, because there are ways of bringing you way down hard. Our new nation is the somewhat generic modern state. It ends up being a populist showing up that was at random, but you get a leader from the modern state who took over the forces that were there, which were German. The rules for the modern state are kind of interesting. They can only show up in era 6 or 7. They have a standard trade. They set up a little bit behind on the progress, but still pretty rich. Convert units in the start area if they belong to an empire whose capital is in another region. Wanting to hit gray, my competition here, was a primary concern. There would be a possibility of hitting something down in here. I could have gotten maybe more units if I started here. This is their capital, so I couldn't start there. But the other thing that's kind of pleasing, oil isn't important for me for victory points, but it's important for Germany, so taking an oil away was valuable. And it's also important for cash production. And I'm going to be able to get a nice jump start with this as my new capital. A lot of weak stuff around me in the Native Americans that I can knock out. The other option, another option would have been to start here with this tank and build forces to actually directly combat Germany. The problem with that, of course, is I would gain less in the way of victory points by doing that. I'd be fighting an established and very powerful empire if I created a revolt down there. I'd also be kind of close to my Russians, competing with them for Asia and Europe, which they're interested in both. I've got a chance of getting some victory points off of their remnant, just because the Germans are pretty much spread out completely. So this seemed like a neat idea. It took away a victory point from the Germans, and it gives me some advantages. But it did get rid of an opportunity to really try to slam into them and scoop up a lot of their East Europe territory. So, hard to tell which way made more sense. Production, the modern Chinese highlight why you want to have a good government form. They have no government, no religion. Their income, they lost out on that 1 per for the universal suffrage for not being capitalist, democracy, socialist. And that really has hurt them. They were able to produce a lot less cash. They aren't able to bank points for victory points, etc. So it's definitely you do want to try to keep up with the times, at least in government, once you get past that universal suffrage. And then to fill out the turn, I hope I didn't skip anybody over on the blue-green side like I did last time. I made some screw-ups over here on tan. One, I did a production with the Japanese. I did a production with both, but we'll talk about that. I fixed it. I did a production with the Japanese, but they're so tiny they don't produce much, and they only have room to add 1 unit. They have enough money to build more. They would have loved to build a whole pile of infantry there, but they don't have the administrator or anything, any special ability that allows them, to build the big stack that some of the other powers have managed to build early on. So they built the biggest thing they could, a battleship, and they need to take their old capital back as soon as possible. They didn't feel like they had a good chance by just using 2 battleships against those 2 planes. They'd be at probably a slight disadvantage doing that. But I had the wild card here in the production here, the wild card because I don't think the Japanese were going to move forward, or maybe it was the opposite. Yeah, the Japanese weren't going to move forward. But I decided I don't want to produce with Benin. I need to do a civilized action and get a new capital. I lost my capital. I had done that last turn with the Japanese, not intentionally perhaps, but I think I may have lost my capital and then did my civilize and got it back for free. But doing a production without a capital is painful as hell, because I'm not a feudal society or a barbarian, so I have to pay maintenance and I only get half the money, and well, that doesn't make a lot of sense. Grabbing the civilized makes more sense. Germany had a production, but I played the oversleep against them. Just because I'm actually kind of worried about where they might end up, and they're kind of near me here. I'd like to make sure that they can't defend that better, I guess. I don't know. They're probably not going to be able to. They're so spread out, they're not going to be able to get troops everywhere. But if they're more worried about me, I want to make sure that they don't defend that oil field better than they should otherwise. Now we go to trade in progress, and there's actually a significant amount of that that's going to. Wasn't as much trade as I thought there was. The Khmer did one, and they picked on. They didn't go after Java, I don't think, because Java gets to keep both cards if the Khmer won. I think they picked on the Russians, perhaps. Who's ahead of them? No, because they jumped 3. They may have gone after the Tang, who aren't terribly good. The Tang would have loved to have won one here, because one of their problems, they held off playing a trade in progress because they didn't have very good cards, but they wanted to get ahead of the English. Now, you can see they didn't get there. They have victory point conditions for progress. But anyway, the Khmer ended up winning, getting 3 pips on there. They don't have any special bonuses, but that jumps them up to some better technology. The Khmer didn't really want to pick trade, but they were at kind of the, there's nothing I can gain off of anything, really. You know, I could do a civilize and build up more cities or something like that, but there was nothing they really, really wanted to do. And getting that higher technology means next time if they do a civilize, they can upgrade some of their infantry that they have kicking around into the motorized units and the like, and they can upgrade some of their ships to battleships and get themselves more into this modern age. The English also did trade. They picked on the natives and ended up getting their 2 pips there fairly easily. They actually had this very high card, but because of capitalism, they got to play 2 cards. Choose one. So that was their reserve. They ended up giving up a 6 instead and ended up winning the trade, getting their 2 pips forward. You can see they're up to nukes already, which means next production they can start really making the world ugly. I'm going to have to look up. I think there's a glory penalty to firing off nukes, but man, you can do a lot of damage with them. I think they have unlimited strength. No, unlimited range. They have a 9, that's the satellites. No, they have a 9 range, unlimited strength, but they kill 5 glory to use them. So you really, really, you know, have to know what you're doing when you fire one off and know that you're getting that much value. And so they will win the round of combat that they fight. I think they also destroy the entire everything in the space. I'm not positive. I'll have to look that up. But they're very, very potent there. And but bombers are a more impressive thing. And more importantly, I'm getting pretty close to being able to push over. I do another trade in progress next turn, and I'm within 7, which means I win. So I'm really threatening the stability, the stability of the game at this point, in terms of it is about to end. Some people want to maybe play things to prevent me from taking another trade in progress next turn. That may be more important than playing this card for my own glory, but who knows. In addition to that, I got a little cash, which is important to the English, of course, and I got a bonus glory for winning a trade as a capitalist country. So overall, a really good play by the English, and if I can remember, they're probably going to do it again next turn, just try and push themselves over the limit, depending on where the victory points land, but it looks like. Given the victory point situation, or glory points, or whatever you want to call them, The Tang have moved in and knocked out a couple of Javanese ships, because they're up there. And they've also marched on the Khmer here in the gray area. Basically, they don't want Java getting the world advantages. They don't want the Khmer getting the Southeast Asia. They're hoping they get the balance out of this. It's hard to tell because you don't know what's happening. Well, we know the Khmer have gone already. But this opens up a can of worms in that these two democracies are now available. I don't get any glory out of this because I'm socialist now. Yep, sorry, the Tang do get glory. They captured one territory, so they get one. I had them mixed up with the socialists in South America who... well... they kind of lose their incentive to take out the Portuguese there. The Portuguese moved next. Well, the Persians moved and took the Russians out of here. The Portuguese moved next, and they actually went after the Spaniards, which is totally worthless in terms of positioning here, but they need to be the biggest Christian nation. Oh, well, second biggest, and they managed to do that. They threw Castile into disarray by seizing Andalusia. They made an attack on Castile as well and lost there. After a slight cheat because I forgot to produce with the Javanese. Anyway, I went back, fixed that. You know, it's so random what I fix and what I don't. Obviously, if this was a competitive game with opposed players, I wouldn't be asking, oh shit, I forgot to do this. But, you know, the way I'm trying to handle it, I don't know. Anyway, they had a production chit in play and ended up using that kind of outside the normal order. Let's see who else went. We had maneuvers by the Russians. I guess they were the last one to do a maneuver, and basically they launched an attack here. Other than that, just some expansion into some ocean territories. The attack here was against the modern Chinese. They managed to defeat them by throwing everything in and getting kind of lucky. They got a point of glory off of it, though, because they're still Islamic, and the modern Chinese are nothing. All right, that's going to put us to the destiny phase. Probably the end of what I do today. I discovered another screw-up on my part. Over here in blue, I had this industrial espionage card in my hand. It's a very useful card. And they got hit with a trade over here with the natives, I believe, which I think they did. I can't really recall. And it would have allowed them to switch who the winner was. But, you know, if I'm not looking at every hand at every time, again, this is just a matter of solo play, because a card like that, I'd say there's maybe a 60 to 80% chance if I'm holding it in my hand in an opposed game, I'd actually notice it. You know? If I was playing a game of Magic and I'm intimately aware of my deck, or if I played this game, say, you know, once a month for a year, I would be in that kind of, I don't know if I could play this once a month for a year. It seems to take about a month long. It would be my continuous game, but say 3 or 4 times a year. If this was half my gaming life, it would all fall into place, and I would know all these things playing opposed. I still would have trouble solitaire. But if you don't have that, if you have to deal with all these very, very rich in information cards in your hand, and just remember what your handful of cards allows you to do, you're going to make these kind of mistakes, which in a sense is kind of like, well, okay, so my solo experience isn't all that different in some ways, because I would still be dropping the ball pretty constantly if I was playing an opposed game of this. But it is just so discouraging. I feel every bit as discouraged, though, when I'm playing opposed and I'm holding a card and I realize, oh shit, I had this in my hand, you know? It's I don't know, it's just very, very, It's the kind of thing that really irritates me about a game, makes it not fun to play, but it doesn't stop me from wanting to play it. It's just weird situations there. Germany is in an interesting position here. I'm looking at their cards, gray in general, but and I've got a couple that are of value. Feudalism I don't care about, and I'm just going to throw this one out. But I've got this World War, and that's a possibility because I'm planning on civilizing next turn because of the moon landing. The moon landing gets some really nice bonuses. But when I look at the World War and what it does, it doesn't seem at all to favor an empire that's all spread out. It favors ones that are prepared to expand and to attack, and it really would favor an Islamic one. So I'm going to just ditch this. I'm not going to hold on to it. If somebody else wants to take a turn to play it, that's fine. But I'm looking to doing the moon landing. Again, that's got some real bonuses towards victory. Every time you do a civilized action, once you get it, you get a glory point, for example. All kind of neat stuff there. Gray's apparently powerful position has attracted a lot of attacks on them through the civilized actions, the first couple. First of all, they lost their oil here. They went back a progress here from the volcano that happened here. Yellow, or pink also shot down a yellow boat, but then they went with the urban riots again, reducing German cities. The problem with this, of course, is if I can figure out where dark green is, is that dark green, if they were in a mountain, they would have been the one to hit, actually, with the volcano instead, just to wipe them off the board. Dark green is a high-tech thing in a leading player's position. That also needs to be targeted, but I have a lot of trouble hitting that. I could do just some damage to the Russians and reduce their points, but none of the cards have really hit the Russians in the way that other things have. Reds also played this Glorious Pity at the correct time, giving them 3 points of glory. That's always sweet to grab the difference. Only to the next player, you know. It's not going to help a lot towards getting you towards first place, but 3 glory is a lot of points, actually. Jumping into too much detail here again. I don't know why the Spaniards civilized. I had some reason behind it, but I can't figure it out for the best of my purposes. But now we're over on Benin, who's also doing kind of an iffy civilization action. Maybe with the hope of getting cards that'll give him points or something. Here, the only thing he's got that he's playing is a heresy card. Now, what he'd most like to do is hit, say, Russia with it. Lose them a point of glory. And then, wow, all of the Islamic nations are hurt. The problem with that is Benin's an Islamic nation. It would hurt the English. It would hurt the Russians. I'm looking to see, there's other Islamics like the Latin Americans who it would not hurt because they're socialist. It would hurt the Tang. A lot of countries that I could do a lot of damage to. Many of which come before me. So, you know, if I played my wild card over on Benin, it's not like Benin's doing all that much. It might be worth it. Because the other option is to hit the Germans again in Christianity. There aren't a lot of Christian nations out there, though. We got the Portuguese, who are doing okay. And the Spaniards, whom we really don't care about. Yeah, I'm going to just go for the Germans with that. We're just getting plowed over with problems, and they lose a point of glory from that. And we'll continue with other things. Nasty combination of cards on the glory phase. Orange plays the Glory pour moi. Now they were planning on playing Glorious Glory next. That gets bad auguried by blue. But picked up by brown. and played. Is that possible? I'm not sure. The problem with that is, with thinking that way, is orange plays this. Okay, it's down on the board. If the vizier is played on it, I know the bad augury. See, here's... The question is, which one can I pick up? Because I can only pick up the top card on the discard pile. So if the bad augury is put like this, I don't think the vizier can be used. It could only be used to pick up the bad augury. So what's happening is the Glory pour moi is being canceled. I think I'm still going to play Glorious Glory, which doubles everyone's glory. Because I think I'm in pretty good shape still with these. We'll see. Remember, that can have bad effects on the Hindus. You know, even when I mentioned it last time, I think I failed to take it into account when I actually scored it. It's almost impossible because I don't calculate out my whole glory at once for a single country. Here's the problem with that. Because I look and I take care of the easy things first. I say, oh, I got that. Yeah, I'm pretty sure I'm top outside Europe. Okay, money's easy to find. Okay, ships. So I count all these, I double them, I throw them on here, and then I go to the ships. So it's very, very easy. And otherwise, what you essentially have to do is write down the numbers as you're going. Now, I'll try to get it correct, but there's no guarantees. I think I screwed up last time, even though I was aware of it. And that would be the first time that I might not have screwed up with the Glorious Glory. Actually, that's not even really a problem with Glorious Glory. It's just a problem with counting the glory, because I can't remember how much I've moved ahead already when I go to do the complicated things. Some of these glory things require that you count like many other empires' totals everywhere to figure out if you got it. By totals, I mean like their territory on the land. So if you're worried about, and the boats is a good example, although it's not a terribly... there aren't big numbers involved in it. Basically what you want to do is you want to score everything else, and then you come to the one that you're having trouble with. So you mark those others, then you go down and you say, okay, well, I'm going to count all my boats because I have to look everywhere. And now I have to look everywhere under everyone else's to find their boats and to see if how many people are ahead of me. And once, you know, I come in third, well, then I stop worrying. But essentially it does mean looking at almost every stack of more than one piece on the board to make sure there's not a boat hiding in it. And there's a similar type of cost if you want to see, hey, am I the biggest in Asia? Okay, I got to count all the Russians. They look kind of big. And the modern Chinese, you know. So some of the instances that give you points are complex enough that you want to push everything else off, you know, and you just forget about maybe that special effect that Hinduism has, because you know what, you've got so many numbers juggling in your head during this phase that you can't really do it. By the way, we've got very close to ending the game right there. We'll see. I probably shouldn't have played the Glorious Glory because of that. I think I made a mistake making this video so long because I think the next one's going to be perhaps quite short. We'll take a look at this. But Latin America is above the Renaissance, so I can spend 20 to get myself one more, doubled as 2. This is where we are in the point line. You can see green's fallen a little behind, but both gray and yellow-orange were able to produce quite a few points. It was actually a wise move to play the Glorious Glory, I guess. A little risky, though. I mean, if you had calculated it out, you would know, but you couldn't. You're not supposed to do that in the game. Sometimes I'm not sure if I'm getting the counts right, too. That's another problem. So, like, in History of the World, it's very easy to count. Hey, who's got the most in Africa? Who's got the most here? Well, in this, everybody's looking for their scores at the same time, and they're all kind of conflicting. So it's not like, hey, let's score this right now. And if you did that, it would make the Hindu issue harder. And God knows, wait, he got 6. Okay, let's start hurting people for these. He's definitely taken a hit from Hinduism there. The Glorious Glory hurt him. Anybody else got it? Gray. Gray got 1, 2, 3, 6. He's taking a hit from it. I don't think there are any... the Persians are Hindu. Neat. They produced almost nothing. They produced 4, which I think is safe. It's over 4. Okay. So anyway, the reason that I think this video has gone too long and the next one's going to go short is this. It wasn't clear to me when I decided to go on that this would be the case, but the English are within 1 trade of getting across. They're the ones holding the overslept card. If somebody else had that, they could prevent the English from taking their action. It's going to be really tough to stop them at this point. We'll see if anybody can manage it in the next turn, as the turn marker pushes over to here. Now, here's also another interesting thing. The question of placement in victory positioning versus not so much anything else, although to some extent maybe the possibility of overall winning, but the possibility of future potential that knowledge that the game is probably going to end kind of cuts short. So in this case, the Portuguese. This would be the turn when I would think about ditching the Portuguese, although they're not that bad. But if I have a good card in my hand, I may still want to do that. But the problem is, if this is the last turn of the game, my best position is going to be gained by having all my empires on the map. It may be too late for anybody to throw an empire out. This is also a problem for poor Japan here. However, I kind of made the decision to stick with them, it seems. All right, let's send this